welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, which will be our last film review of sorts for Caroline, we are not going to be talking about necessarily Caroline's history here. We're going to be looking at another Abby Cox video, and this one is just funny. So this has to do with hat pins. So one, I like hats, but these are long things that are used to keep your hat on your head, that women used, and they were made illegal. Why were they made illegal? Abby talks about this in this video. They were used as a weapon by women. So this was, in many ways, the modern pepper spray were these hat pins. So talk about how women used to defend themselves, because men were getting handsy and were going to poke you with a hat pin. Now, please note, these things are made of metal. They are, imagine a needle only like this long. And yes, they were not banning hat pins. They were managing the length of hat pins. So, but still, and remember, sometimes depending on the time period, a hat pin this big is not a big deal because they have very, very large hats. But again, it's a funny video, and yes, obviously Caroline, hats were being worn outside by everyone up until the dolls I'm thinking would be Kit, who is in the Great Depression. So around World War I, it started going down because they were expensive, and of course the 1920s they were smaller. But yeah, hats started going out of style by the 1930s. But until then, everybody was periodically wearing hat pins. And left, of course, again in the 20s, you had the little cloth, the tight little hats, which of course you see. I may have Kit wearing her hat. She has one of those 1920s hats. Just because fashion, particularly in hats, did not change quite that fast. But it's a very interesting video that she does that talks about American laws. And in many ways, this is talking about American history, which I do think is important. Even when talking in 1812, women would have had hat pins. Caroline, she was mostly wearing bonnets. But she does, I'm trying to think, most of her hats, like Felicity's, tied on, though I think Felicity would probably have worn hat pins as well. Their mothers most certainly would have. And moving up through a lot of the history, the fashionable hats, Samantha, who we'll be dealing with later, definitely would have had hat pins. This would have, as well as Rebecca, who for some reason I keep forgetting to mention, because she's in the 1940s. Or not 1940s, 19 teens, would have been wearing hat pins. That's how they kept their hats on their heads. So it is a very, very interesting video. It's very, very funny, but yes, it became an illegal weapon because, again, women used them to defend themselves, and even from pickpockets. And the government, mostly, men, were getting irritated. Probably because their sons were feeling up other women or themselves, and they were being poked with hat pins. And they're a giant needle, to be funny. But again, and I had to double check how long this video is. It's very, very funny. It's also very informative. So it's about 34 minutes. So, but it's an extremely interesting video. It does a little bit talk about different hats. I am fond of hats. I do not wear hats all that often. I need to have the courage to wear hats, but I have a tendency to be wearing clothes that do not look great with hats, and I'm not fond of baseball caps. So, nonetheless, it's a half-an-hour video talking about laws involving hat pins, but of course it also talks about women's rights and different things. So it is historical. I do recommend it. Yes, I'm doing a lot of these fashion videos right now. In fact, I'm doing several of them. It is the 21st of January, doing them in a row just because I'm trying to get stuff done. And I do not have the energy to watch a lot of the longer historical things like I did when my daughter was not in school. It's just, again, life. And I really do enjoy Abby. I enjoy Nicole Rudolph. They have a lot of great historical information on fashion, which to me is important when even when you're doing not studying fashion, but when you're talking about history, because this is part of life. In the case of the hat pins, this was law. So this is, you're looking at different, when you're doing women's history, these were laws made to benefit men because they were taking away a weapon used by women to defend themselves against handsy men. So it is extremely interesting. This is again one of her deep dives. So I highly recommend it, and I think it's important to also understand, to put yourself back in that time period accurately. So, which is again why I covered some of the her video that has to do with things like corsets and stays, and Nicole's video on shoes. Just so it's not presumed that the clothing these people wore was bad or wrong or uncomfortable particularly. So I personally would love to wear a corset. I take off my bra the moment I can, not because it's insanely uncomfortable, but because I'm just done with it. And quite frankly, again, I think corsets are probably would be far more comfortable than girdles. And I also love hats when it comes to this video. I really wish we would go back to wearing hats, and I will probably cover her video on liners. We do not wear hats anymore later on in my American Girl History series. So that is it for this review. We will be moving on to Josephina, where I will be doing a lot of videos from Crash Course on history, though I think a lot of them are going to be Crash Course's Latin literature. So, because that is what I can find for her time period. So, check out the rest of the channel. I covered Felicity last month, and I overlapped a little bit when it comes to fashion here, just because 1776 and 1812 are really, they're 30 years apart. So there's not a huge wide range of differences between Felicity and Caroline, except for the style of clothing. But nonetheless, so next month again we'll be going into New Mexico into the 1820s with Josefina, so it's completely different. Culture, area, everything. And then we'll be going to Cecile and Marie Grace into New Orleans in the 1850s, and then we'll head north to Kirsten, who's still in the 1850s, and then we'll move on to the slavery with Addie in the 1860s, and then on to our massive jump both in time period and wealth status with Samantha in 1904, I think. So if you like what you see, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thank you.